This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. Discussion on this edition of the program, the nun who died on January 17th at age 118. She was imprisoned by her infirmities, it was said, but she had beat COVID. Before her, an Iowa woman, Bessie Hercules, 115, died, and she was the oldest in the United States. Well, this lady, Sister Andre, she knew the world, they say, before the First World War. She woke up early enough to have breakfast at 7. She went to church every day, even when she was no longer able to see. Well, but she had been preparing to die, which she said at the time God didn't seem to be ready for her. And she had some issues with that. The question is the challenges of aging, how we get over it, but also how we accept that it is upon us. And to live that kind of life, what takes place? Dr. Rouse, good to see you.
And a pleasant morning to you and to our viewers. I will sound a bit like Alice Walker when she said she doesn't want to be a role model because of the pressures that brings on to a person to say, well, everything that they do, you have to experience or not. So, but to be more candid, it is a straight question of how you feel, what was your lifestyle, and we're talking from way, way, way back. How were you fed? What was your diet? Even the ones from your parents, who some of them didn't know, they just handing down what their parents fed them. Or, because of my age now, our parents, my parents came through world wars, so they knew about scarcity and lack. So you ate, you grew what you ate. Yeah. And that was the frugal way of doing it, you see. So we know about homegrown, the fowls in the yard, they eat their corn, you know, food was around you. And then community existed. And that could even buffer now the psychological aspect of how you grew.
So what you're saying is that in a time previously, more people lived longer than
oh,
those who are living now?
No, surprisingly. In spite of the homegrown diet and all that is good, because what we call in vegan now, they did naturally, plant-based. Yeah. However, the vagaries of the environment, poor sanitation, lack of fundamental medicine and medication, because I remember when my father practiced in Tobago in the 1930s and 40s, when he would have been in his 20s. I mean, if you got a toothache, you had to wait on a boat to take you to Trinidad.
To come to Trinidad.
So where you going? And then most times what they used to medicate was like quinine, which if you don't know the measurement of could be poisonous. So it's all of those things that I remember.
Quinine tablet, they don't have them things anymore?
They have them, but it's not as popular. Because I remember my mother said, you know, being in Tobago in those times, what used to also kill some of the babies was the tarantula spider. It would come into the pillow. So they were really victims of the environment, the physical environment, and as a result, and then they also had communicable diseases. And those communicable diseases were waterborne, insect-borne, you know, and easily caught. As a result of which, that's why families were huge, because the mortality rate was high based on the poor sanitary conditions, etc. Morbidity was high.
So people deliberately wanted to have more children.
Precisely. And then you didn't have contraceptives. You know, well, of course, I am the last of 9. And you know, they used to heckle me and say, well, you all didn't have TV. But it's not a question of not just having the TV. Is what happened on the outside. And it is because of us who are named the baby boomers, those of us born between 1946 and 64, coming out of that ethos now and exposed to measles, mumps, and all these, and then those brought on, they had diseases that babies caught. That's what ushered in pediatrics. So I always try to let people know the complaining, why things don't go. So I say, can you imagine a sterile world where everything worked as it should? Then there will be no invention. There will be no need to discover. There will be no need to exercise that creative lobe of the brain. And all of this is what I am getting acculturated to now, you know, and I'm not going to sit and say, boy, if I had only known this before, boy. No, I might not have had the capacity to assimilate it and understand it. So making a shift and making a change now, that could continue right up to your demise. That you realize, I don't like how my body feels. You could make an internal shift and change the way your body is looking. If it is like it's a little overweight, you shift your diet. You look at your exercise or not, because many don't, and live a kind of sedentary life. All of those variables. But if innately you conditioned yourself to be lazy, you were taking that on.
Yeah, and this lady used to do a lot of things. Like you know, she went to church every day, even when she could no longer see. She had set herself the aim of being the record holder for who lives the longest. And there's this lady. Yeah, but then
she said she was burdened with the infirmities.
Yeah.
So when you invited me to be guest at this, I went to the Chambers Dictionary and I said, let me see what they define infirmity as. And the words are feeble, frail, weak, sickly, and unstable. Those were the words.
Yeah, but she didn't appear to be unstable per se,
no,
but she had some of those other things.
Now what happens physically with the process of aging, that's the involuntary part we have no control over. That, the processes that we live in with when you're in your 20s, when you're in your teenage years and all of that, they slow down. And they start slowing down all beyond the age of 35, 40. So that by 45, 50, some of those processes of digesting food, elimination of food, when you eat, critical. And so you will find now a person in the 80s, if even they want to, some force it because they condition themselves that at 10 o'clock in the night they have to eat a big plate of food. But that is conditioning from maybe their communal setting at the home. But as you get older and go up the chain, your body doesn't feel for that intake at that hour. So you find all like from 7 o'clock, you don't feel to take in a big pot, but you remember how we party and everything. So even in parties, we take a plate of food, but then we're dancing. You dance it out because, you know, food is fuel.
Yeah, how easy it is for us to, or difficult it is for us to break out of what happened, what we experienced in our formative years?
It is not easy. It is easy for some, almost effortless. And then it is not easy for others. It feels onerous.
What makes the difference, you think?
It is temperament, one, but how was that household conditioned that you grew up in? Let us say a family with a dynamic of you being the only child. I am the last of 9. Immediately the dynamic is different. Good?
Okay.
So you find that I have a community in my house. Didn't have TV at the time. So I am in
radio,
2 stations. Don't forget Ready Fusion, A and B.
Yeah.
Good. But the conversation, then I had my grandmother in the household as well. So the advantages, and I use this guardedly, of being number 9. I observing all the other 8, and then I came 5 years after the one before me. So I am looking at them because...
Whether you're doing it consciously or not, but it was happening.
It was happening. And you will always hear, whether it's a Dr. Spock or whatever, say, couples who are going through rough times and difficulty, maybe on the verge of a divorce, and holding on because of the children. The children picking up all the emotional, in the atmosphere, ateliers and energy. So the children, from baby to up to toddler, they wouldn't know the words to use, but they would be confused, like, you certainly are not looking like you are happy, but why are you we put in the words, why are you tolerating this when you can leave? But they don't understand. So you holding on like you're dragging an iron bolt just for them, when the lesson should be for them, when you are in a irreparable, irreconcilable relationship, you have choice. And your capacity for stress, Your capacity for internal damage that you experiencing has a limit. Tina Turner, when she get enough beaten, she said, nah, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And left with 37 cents. So you could leave now. The differences are capacity.
Where do we get that from?
Where did we get that from? Some of it is genetic. Like how you find some persons with age and remain looking younger for a longer period. That part of that is genetics. Good, as you hear people say, good genes.
Yeah, good genes.
But then when you see what is modeled around you, here are the institutions that, it's 5 of them, that have the major impact on you, observing and then being instructed by. Your first institution is the family. Second one, the school. Third, the church, or let me say religion.
Yeah.
Yeah? Then the community, number 4. And then the government as the overarching. All of them have rules and guidelines. Some de facto, some de jure, where it is written. But in many of them, and especially how we are Caribbean people, many of them are not written, but it is understood. And that is the kind of dance that we are still seeing today, where that line between what is legal and what is ethical, that comes from quite back in the home. Because there are things that your parents said, like chewing food in your mouth is full, but you want to talk, and you want to talk the most around it. That is a known, well, you know, they used to just look at you. You didn't have to be visiting somebody to get that look. It's just not accepted in the house. 5 girls, 4 boys, the brothers could not eat around the table bareback. You do not walk into a house with a hat, cap or whatever, you know it. We never even question where they get that from. No, it is just not done. Good? So we're not going into all the rules, but I'm telling you, those instances where you had authority. So daddy was the patriarch. Mama's mother was the matriarch, not mama, because of age. Good? So she's in her 80s, and it was amazing. I could remember vividly up to now, because I was little. The moment daddy comes home, if granny's in the kitchen with mama, they chatted, granny goes into her room. In other words, daddy didn't tell her anything. Mama didn't say, hey, Mr. Rose, come. No, she knew her respect. She didn't marry him and give them their space. You follow? So I'm just saying, in building the building blocks of authority, one, so the child is not confused with the messaging. Because my father, all who know him as a headmaster and a teacher, what he said he meant, and what he meant he said.
So would these things contribute to
building capacity? Michelle Obama said it in a different way when she said, you know, there's a muscle. Now, she don't mean a physical muscle, you know, that builds resilience. You study, you're bright, you get all your degrees. You just know automatically doors are opening for you. Your CV looks most attractive because you did it the right way. Therefore, a job in this field. Oh, yeah? So you now start writing out applications or looking in classified ads and whatever. Rejection. Some don't even answer or acknowledge that they got. You start in your little way questioning, but what's all of that I just finished doing, work hard, whatever. And then worse, if you heard people who had zilch got in. You got me? Mm-hmm. Now, that brings me to the next part of this building capacity. I always refer to Erik Erikson. He's a psychoanalyst. Yeah. And Erik Erikson designed a psychosocial chart of maturation. And what he says is life offers you tasks. This is in building now who you will be at a psychosocial level. Because the psychosocial level, I have come to realize, is the 2 main areas that persons get the most difficulty from in how they age. Yeah. Because the aging process is involuntary. We can't stop it. Good? Slowing down and whatever. But how we grow old, we could do it differently. We could slow it down. We can't stop it. But we could change our attitude towards how we grow old by building these building blocks. And if you need to take a break or so, we could go into how Erik Erikson said. So every task for you to master must have a challenge, a conflict, or an affront.
So you think the French people understood this because they, or understand this? They're saying that there are 21,000 people 100 years and over in a country with 67 million. We get to that on the other side.
Sure.
This is 10 questions. We'll be back in a moment. Stay with us.
Sure.
With society plagued by a host of issues, with debates surrounding our urgent concerns falling short, with questions of our future not always being answered.
The conversation continues. Join me, Kemuel Pascal, as the voice of the youth comes to life. We will confront the controversial topics of today's world to gain answers that are key for a better tomorrow. One and One with me, Kemuel Pascal. Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Only on WESN Content Capital.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
Welcome back to the program. This is 10 Questions. Our guest, Dr. Jennifer Rouse. We're talking about longevity in the wake of the death at 117 of the French nun, Sister Andre. One of the things she said was that she had gotten tired of living and she wanted to go. She wasn't afraid to die because she wasn't afraid of going away. So before we get to that, you wanted to come back on the issue.
So just to finish with Erik Erikson. So what he says is the very first, it is 8 stages that he says you go through to reach your full, wholesome, mature self. What he says is you don't jump any stage. To transcend, to go to the next stage, you must experience the challenge of it. So the first stage is trust. So that when you're in a family, when you breastfeeding and all of that, you are trusting this person, in this case your mom, your dad, whatever is the environment. Imagine if that is just removed from you. She got killed, whatever. Her smell, her touch, her whatever is gone. You're not going to mature like me, who had her there all the time. Or in this case, where now daycare and nurseries are the order of the day, and you have to be dropped off, sleep on a pillow in the car, move to somewhere else. That transitionary movement, and you're in traffic jam, all this is going through while you're still in early childhood and all of that. Those are the environmental shocks. But to master trust, you must experience mistrust. In other words, how a betrayal, you know, in our local parlance, horn, you experience one, then they took all words like tabanka and all the, and there are variations of it. However, nobody's saying you have to experience that. But if you did, it will be a different take in how you now trusting this world you come into. Good? So and of the affronts, you have disappointment, betrayal, and even death.
What you tell me is that I am beginning to think something is wrong with me, because I never knew being raised by my mother. I tell people that my grandparents kidnapped me from my mother because they felt that she had me too young at 16 and so on.
So they were your guardian, you see? And you know, when even I became the director and had to interview staff, especially the boys, the young men that came, the differences in how they did the interview, inevitably, I would ask the few who stood out or hit me in a different way, I say, who were you raised by? All of them were their grandmother.
Yeah.
See?
Right, yeah.
So I'm just saying that was what he said. So what I noticed in looking at Erik Erikson's chart, the first 4 of the 8 were what you, the individual, had to build. So you had to build that trust from getting the shocks of betrayal, disappointment, whatever, and knowing that that doesn't mean that the whole world is not to be trusted, but now you're hardening now your muscle, that muscle that you don't have, to know, wait a minute, all the world is not blue.
Right.
Not because I love everybody, that everybody loves me, and we go through the world like that, because you're going to get it. You follow?
Yeah.
And you
let's
go
come
right
to this
up.
point about how we treat with going away, and some of us have the fear of death kills us.
Right.
And this lady was saying she wasn't afraid at all, and she thought that God was taking too long, because she figured she'd done her time, and she'd done what she had to do, and she wanted to go.
Good.
But that she wasn't getting to go. How do we deal with end stage
Now,
living?
as I said on previous interviews with you, 60, being an older person is defined by being 60 and over. But that's a long haul, because we have centenarians.
Yeah,
now.
she was 117.
Yeah. So we have the 60 to 74 that they demarcate as the young old. The 75 to 84 is the old, and the over 85 as the oldest old. So in that one, those are the ones that are going to be more infirm than the other 2 cohorts. Good? So as you go up the trail, in terms of frailty for some, it doesn't mean bending and all of that, but frailty, the body, you feel the weight of the bones, the weight of the physical bones more. The skin becomes very thin. So on a normal day when everybody might be feeling comfortable, you may be feeling a little cool, bordering on cold. Then you will find your taste different. Some things will feel very salt, but you didn't put much salt. That's what they had been accustomed to, but the taste has changed. The hearing, you're not losing it, but you have to bend forward or listen more carefully, attentively.
But then you're losing it.
Or use assistive devices, but it is gradually declining. Yet, do you know, at the point of dying, if you are given time to die, do you know the auditory is the last one to go? You could hear things going on 2 houses away and saying, what is all that noise? But we're not hearing the noise, but you picking it up. So even though it was declining where I and you talking, how come they hear that?
I've heard it said that even when you are presumed to have been gone, that you could still hear, but you just can't respond.
Transition.
How do people know that?
Well, I guess now over time with science and medicine, they have very acute, sensitive, that's the word, sensitive instruments that are picking up energy waves. This is why I'm now studying on my own the whole process of what they call now eugenics and epigenetics, because science as we knew it dealt with the 5 senses, and if anything is beyond those, it don't exist. That's wrong. So they're now realizing that there is an energy field that we reverberate with. Because when you break it down, who is man? We just a creature of nature, you know.
Yeah. How do you help encourage people to accept going away? Do you do that?
It is easy for some, because let us say you grew up in an environment, both in all your experiences, from the home go right through, of being fearful. What's the acronym FEAR? False evidence appearing real. So you not even stopping to question what it is I'm afraid of. But I'm putting this in like a devil's advocate. What if another school of thought that is speaking about reincarnation as a reality, scientifically as a reality, and you are like, you see me, I ain't going there. And what made me think of things like that? Remember the house, and I'm just using this one example, that was near to the Maraval RBC that caught fire, and those 3 children died.
Yeah.
Good? What if reincarnation is real and they return? What will be their attitude to fire? We live in that. They would not understand the life they had. They would not understand, remember. But they would be like, where is this fear? They wouldn't even stop the question, but the moment they see fire, they will have a reaction because of what they had experienced. And we just put in that there because in Hinduism, which comes from the Vedas, reincarnation, hear how they put it, we are souls with a body. When we want to make a shift, and we do, this body that we have will be of no use to us, we're going to change it, and we're going to change it.
Come back in a different form.
Christianity, Western thinking is we are a body with a soul. So in other words, when I dead, bury my clothes. You're dead, you're done. You see the difference, eh? So can you imagine growing up in a plural society with these differing, largely differing, almost antithetical to one another? How do they deal with that? As well as you could have a situation where they could be reckless and say, I live in my life however I feel because you know what, I could come back.
But doesn't Christianity also talk about
the afterlife?
Yeah.
The afterlife, but they never went into it in the way now that the
Hinduism
Eastern,
does.
you follow? The
philosophy
Eastern
does.
philosophy has done it because they understand it. And that's why now you find the panic for the majority of them is lessened than the panic for some who are from the Western religions because they're studying what they didn't finish, what they need time to continue to do, and almost telling Basil, now there's an expert in the field of death, dying, and bereavement, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She is the guru in that area. Yeah. And she too showed it as in the process of death and dying, both for the person who is dying and for the relatives, it goes through 5 stages. Yeah. If you go to the doctor, you're feeling good, eh? But you need to do a checkup to retain your job. And this is a general checkup. And they say, boy, Andy, we ain't like what we're seeing. Let us do some tests. And of the tests, now it reveals they see this blockage, and you could have roughly 6 months or so. You start that process. The first thing is denial. That is the first stage. Nah, I in the gym, I eating plant-based, I doing it right, drinking my water, I doing everything, and I feel good. So you're going through the denial and doubt. Then it, of course, the cancer not staying static, it going through stages, and you're feeling now different.
I call it metastatic.
Thank you. Metastasize, right? Anger is the second one. Especially if you see a vagrant digging in a dustbin, and he living since you was going to school in that dustbin, and you wondering, this couldn't be. Something wrong with what nature doing to me. And you might even be chastising yourself. What did I do wrong?
So maybe life is not fair.
Life is not fair. And it is not equal. You follow? Your third stage is going through the anger. You go now and you start negotiating with God. You say, here now, boss. This is fear. I have real things to do. And I'm not talking not just about the job and whatever. Certain things I really want to accomplish, you know, while I'm here. And then my family. I'm the breadwinner, all of that. Spare me now. Just give me a little more time. They're telling me 6 months, but. Fourth stage, when you see God, you ain't hearing him, nor seeing him. You go to the next one, which is depression. You go in a funk, as they say. And you're just lying down there wondering, boy, where's this boy? Just so. And after you go through that, the stages don't have any particular time.
They have duration and
no.
so on.
The last one is acceptance. However, what Kubler-Ross outlined is that they don't always work in a linear way. After you reach acceptance, you can go back to anger. You follow?
Essentially.
And that occurs for the relatives as well, because they're going through the same thing.
There's always never enough time to talk with you about these things, but thanks for sharing those thoughts with us. We will keep it going here. This has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.